We will start the regular press conference by Minister Hayashi. The floor is yours, Minister. I do not have any initial remarks. If you have any questions, if you wish to ask your question, please raise your hand. After invitation, please come forward to the microphone. Tell us your name and affiliation. Iwasa-san, NHK. Iwasawa, NHK. This is about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in the southern part of Ukraine. Russia is occupying this power plant. The government of Ukraine asserts that Russia has placed explosives and is criticizing. IAEA is also asking for on-site inspection. What is the response of the government of Japan as a G7? How will you deal with this power plant issue? The position of Japan is, as you have mentioned, in response to the announcement by the government of Ukraine and IAEA, we are carefully monitoring the situation at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The position of Japan is, I will once again express the most serious concern regarding Russia's occupation of the nuclear power plant and its militarization. And on top of that, if I may say so, I did have a meeting with Director General Grossi on the 4th. On that occasion, I told him that I have consistently appreciated the efforts of the Director General highly regarding the nuclear safety in Ukraine, and also as the G7 presidency, I once again told him that we will closely communicate and collaborate with Director General Grossi. I shall communicate closely with G7 members, and we will support the endeavors of IAEA.
Next question, please. Yoda-san from Yomiuri. Yoda from Yomiuri. Alps treated water discharge into the sea. False information countermeasures as well as enhancing correct information dissemination is increasingly important. How does the Foreign Ministry intend to work on this? As for the Alps treated water, based on science, evidence, objective and correct information must be disseminated, and it will have to be known by people both domestic and overseas. This is very important, increasingly important, to contain harmful rumors. Malicious dissemination of false information is a threat to our universal values such as freedom and democracy, which is the foundation of our society. This would hinder reconstruction of the disaster-affected areas, and it could harm the sentiments of the people living in disaster-affected areas who are working on reconstruction. The Japanese government firmly objects to dissemination of false information. So at the Foreign Ministry, to such false information with malicious intent, we intend to take necessary measures against it, and with transparency and based on science, we will try to disseminate information correctly.
共同通信桂田さん、共同ニュース。桂田共同ニュース。Following up, I also want to ask about the Alps treated water. Director General Grossi of IAEA will travel to Republic of Korea and will brief about the comprehensive report on the release of the water. The government of Republic of Korea already has expressed that they will respect the decision of the IAEA, but there is strong opposition, mainly by the opposition party. What is your expectation about Mr. Grossi's visit? Regarding Mr. Grossi, Director General IAEA's visit to other countries after coming to our country, we are not in the position to discuss. Having said that, the position of Japan is, so far, we have offered briefings at the Director General levels, or we have had an opportunity to host expert missions to observe the site by Republic of Korea in April, and we have been providing careful, in-depth information provision and briefing about the safety of the Alps treated water. In view of the conclusion of the IAEA report on the release into the sea, we will continue to provide a careful briefing to stakeholders at home and abroad, including ROK, with high transparency, and on the safety of Alps treated water into the sea. We will continue our effort to further advance the understanding by ROK.
Next question, Iwasa-san from NHK. Iwasawa from NHK. A related question about the planned discharge into the sea of Alps treated water. The Korean government has conducted their own analysis and investigation, and it is to be released today. What is your expectation of this report? July 7th is the date that the Korean government will be publishing its report on their position on Alps treated water. And about this report, we would like to examine the content of this report. And to South Korea, as I said earlier, we have had briefings, meetings of Director General meetings, as well as in May, we had the panel of experts from Korea visiting Fukushima. And based on science, we have been conducting information dissemination very thoroughly on safety of release of the Alps treated water. Based on science, with transparency, we would like to continue to work with South Korea as well as the international community in giving a thorough explanation.
TBS
Miyamoto-san, TBS. Thank you. Miyamoto, TBS. A different topic, and this is about the three principles on the transfer of defense equipment. On the 5th, the ruling party of LDP and the Komeito have discussed about the guidance and has issued a summary of issues. Under certain conditions, they have agreed that under certain conditions, weapons can be exported. What does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs think, and what will be the impact onto other like-minded countries? At the ruling party working team, starting from April of this year, there has been a total of 12 meetings, and by the active discussions amongst the ruling parties, I am aware that the summary of issues has been compiled. But regarding the substance of the discussion, the government is not in the position to respond. Having said that, regarding the transfer of defense equipment to other countries, as is mentioned in our national strategy, particularly for the peace and stability of the Indo-Pacific region, will be crucial policy instruments in order to create a desirable security environment for Japan and to support countries subject to aggression in intervention of international law. Regarding the review of the systems such as the three principles on the transfer of defense equipment and the guidelines, in view nothing has been decided at this moment. In view of the above-mentioned aspects, we will advance the deliberation, keep in mind the issues summarized by the ruling party.
Next question, Nishimura-san. Nishimura from Radio France. Once again, Fukushima treated water discharge is my question. This discharge of water, about this process, correct information has to be conveyed to people in Japan as well as overseas. That's the emphasis of the Japanese government. But at G7 Hiroshima summit, in the outcome document, the Japanese provisional translation has an error. It's been pointed out many times, but the government says that this is valid and has decided not to make an amendment. But even if the government says that this is appropriate, there is an error that will exist, which is telling the Japanese people that is not factual. And this, in addition, this would mean that this would deceive other G7 countries. The error in Japanese provisional translation could be pointed out by other countries. Why is it that the Japanese government is not amending this translation? Can you give us the real reason why? This G7 Hiroshima summit, as well as G7 related ministerial conferences, outcome documents, original text is English, and provisional translation is provided just as reference. And if you find certain sections that you find to be erroneous, please concretely specify which section.
Ueki-san, please. Thank you, Uechi, Asahi Shimbun. It is 1 year after passing away of former Prime Minister Abe Shinzo. In terms of a consensus-building policy decision within the government and the LDP, Your Excellency, do you feel any changes after the loss of the former Prime Minister? And please tell us what your observation about the last 1 year, including the change in the election district. At 1 year after passing away of former Prime Minister Abe, I once again pray for his spirit, and I express my respect for his achievement. Former Prime Minister Abe exerted outstanding leadership and power to execute in diplomacy. He practiced diplomacy with a panoramic view of the world and has achieved a huge level of results. By following his will, who has created the foundation of Japanese diplomacy, the Kishida government will continue our effort. Regarding election district, I have the honor to run to become the head of the Yamaguchi third election branch, and I understand my big responsibility. In order to unite the Yamaguchi branch, I will work and do my best with a forward-looking perspective in order to create a better future for the region and our country. End of the press conference. Thank you.